on behalf of the Bank of Punjab and Sustainable Development Policy Institute. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this discussion and launch of a very important report titled Pathways to Sustainable Blue Economy, Role of Financial Institutions. I'm very grateful to the partnership with the team at Bank of Punjab. Zafar Saab is here, Syed Saab and their teams. Really grateful to them for bringing this to Islamabad and bring this, of course, bring all the stakeholders together for today's session as well. This is a hybrid setting. So just to inform colleagues joining online that we have, of course, the authors of the report, as well as colleagues from the relevant organizations. And the audience online will have a chance to interact via their questions, which they can, or even comments, which they can post via the chat, which our teams will be picking up in the open discussion session. Before I request both heads of institutions for their welcome remarks, I was hoping for a quick round of introduction, just names and organization, and then we can formally open the meeting. I'm Wakar Ahmed. I'm a Joint Executive Director at Sustainable Development Policy Institute.
Divisional Head, Bank of Punjab.
Thank you very much. We do have colleagues who are joining online who couldn't make it, but I do see that the list may be long. So we'll just stop over here and I'll request Dr. Abid Suleri, Executive Director, SDPI, for his welcome remarks, please.
Thank you, Wakar. Dear friend Zafar Masud Saab, the industry leaders, economic experts, distinguished guests, and all those who have joined us online. It's indeed a matter of great pleasure to welcome you for this very important discussion, what I would say a validating discussion for the report that Bank of Punjab and SDPI they did together on pathways for sustainable blue economy. Looking at Pakistan's economic conditions, I think there are certain constant factors, and we have been trying to basically play with and improve those constant factors only, and they most of the time pertain to our terrestrial economy. Blue economy is a subject which is least discussed in Pakistan. It is a subject we keep on talking about its potential, just like the potential of tourism and potential of natural resources and potential of many other things that we never try to either explore or never try to develop. And this brief report, all it tried to do, it tried to highlight those potential areas, and it tried to come up with the very concrete recommendations, what can be done differently. And we know if the things they are not working well, we need to think of some out-of-box solution. And one of the out-of-box solution today is basically looking at our blue economy potential. I have been writing on the potential of Gwadar port, and after visiting it and after doing my homework, I realized that just building a port for the sake of a port will add no value to our blue economy if we don't develop a port city. Gwadar, and I'm quite candid about it, that Gwadar port is a transshipment port. Now, with a transshipment port, if we don't have our transshipment policy, which was only developed 2 years ago, if we don't have our custom rules on transshipment, if we don't have other capacity on the port, how that transshipment would take place. Of course, in Gwadar, we don't manufacture anything that would be taken from it. So it requires a whole set of different policies. So just building port wouldn't work. Similarly, when we talk of Karachi port or when we talk of Port Qasim, it's not only that we are talking of the port, we are also talking of ecological issues linked with port. We are also talking of how to tap, for example, the UNSCAP and UNEP's green port funds. So now there is a green port initiative, and many countries, they are actually now candidate to get funding from international multilateral donors and partners to turn their ports green. So is it possible that we can actually work on through Karachi port or work through Port Qasim to change the fate of Karachi, at least at environmental aspect. The third important component, which I feel very strongly about, is tapping and exploring the potential of our tourism, the sea tourism. If we have pristine beaches from Karachi to Gwadar, what stops us from having our own inland cruises and having our own inland steamer launches for all income brackets? One can think of tourism opportunities, and of course, this would be a mega thing for Pakistan, at least a Pakistani tourist. Similarly, looking at the inland waterways, is it possible that if we want to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel and if we want to keep our environment clean and green, is it possible that we can shift some of our freight cargo transportation through inland waterways? What is the potential in it? How it can be developed? Either our banking industry is ready to finance some of these projects. Do we have enough sea liners to take the potential of it? People, they often ask me that why Pakistan is not importing from Russia, and while India can do, and I keep telling them that while India is a $500 reserve sitting on $500 billion reserves, but India has a very developed sea liner. If you look at our National Shipping Corporation, they have just a couple of dozen of vessels, and then we don't have a insurance company, Indian insurance company, through their secondary insurance. They do have this sort of muscle that they can insure their vessel and they can import from Russia right now. Pakistan would not be able to. First, we don't have the vessel, and second, we will not be able to afford the insurance premium in a war-hit zone. So thinking of all these aspects, thinking of sustainable potential of blue zone economy, and I'm deliberately not touching the issue of fishery or others which are often talked about. I'm just talking about those aspects which we don't discuss. Marine, the domestic marine tourism, inland waterways, developing our National Shipping Corporation or other vessel corporations, having our own insurance companies for this marine trading, marine mercantile, and developing port cities. If Karachi is the only port city we have, and then we don't have anything, so is it possible that we can develop Gwadar as well? I know for the fact that NTDC hasn't given the tariff policy to the Chinese power producers who were asked to install their power generation plant in Guada. And there is the second chicken situation. When I spoke to some of the responsible people in NAPRA and Power Division, I was told that the moment they would notify the tariff, the power producer, they would start claiming capacity payment charges. So if there is nothing in Guada, it is difficult to notify the tariff. And if you don't have power there, no one would go and invest there. So chicken first or egg first, this sort of situation, that won't take us anywhere. We need to come up with the very concrete and unambiguous plan to explore the potential of our blue economy. Maybe small steps at a time, but at least we should start walking towards this direction. And thank you, Zafar Saab, your team, they supported SDPI researcher and they did excellent work. I think that today's report and today's discussion, which we would subsequently incorporate in the web version of this report, in the PDF, some of the comments that would come from the experts, that would set the direction and guideline, and maybe we'll be able to then prepare some non-paper papers and some advocacy campaigns for the stakeholders that matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Suleri, for your welcome remarks. Now for the opening remarks, I'd request Mr. Zafar Masud Saab. He's President and CEO of Bank of Punjab.
Shukriya, Wakar Saab. It's always a pleasure to be collaborating with academia, think tank, and coming out with topics which are not generally covered in a conventional research. And today's effort is in that direction, where we would like to bring forth all those topics which we think are not being covered or talked about much, but they have a very significant impact on our economy in the future, and bringing people out of the poverty. So in that vein, I'm extremely thankful to all of yours present, and particularly the collaboration with SDPI. Really welcome you all to the report that we prepared called Pathways to Sustainable Blue Economy. This is our effort. This is a very preliminary effort. This is such a wide topic, and as we understand it, the entire world is kind of learning on this topic as we go. And today's effort is also in that direction. There may be certain areas that we would have missed out or ignored, but I think it's a good starting point. It's a good a step in terms of opening up a discussion on this very important topic, which has never been talked about. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Suleri, who's always been, on the forefront of taking initiative for such efforts. So, I say, bahut shukriya aapka. Wakar Saab, who is the real force behind, organizing such events and, and managing them, and then working very closely with. Shukriya, Wakar Saab. Dr. Saab, I don't know if you were aware, but I had a pleasure of working with your team on the pension reforms in KP as well. And what phenomenal work and structured work that your team did, and that's now turning into an action also. So my expectation is that our partnership today will also bring similar sort of results, inshallah ta'ala, as we go along. But we were talking about another province. I'll be very happy to work with you on that one as well, on how we can take it forward there as the second province where this could be implemented. This time, this is an effort in the direction where we've covered all those topics which are economically important for the economic growth and eradication of poverty, and particularly in this particular segment where the below par living standards of the communities directly affected by this sector. We must acknowledge the teams at the World Bank. Rahat is here. Dr. Saab, मैं advantage लेना चाहूँगा of her presence here. Rahat was the real force behind pushing the agenda of blue economy through. Rahat and myself work a lot, almost months, if not years, in working together on making things, realizing all the stakeholders how important this is. And great work done by Rahat and World Bank. ADB again doing a great job. UN representatives are here. Thank you very much for providing your very invaluable insight into this document. But most importantly, and I think the way the whole agenda has been highlighted for the potential of blue economy is none other than by Ministry of Maritime Affairs. Kamran Saab is here. He's been a champion of it for a while. I know it was considered to be a hobby, but Kamran Saab kept that in the forefront at the ministry, which is a very difficult thing to do. And he's been the force behind it. Thank you, Kamran Saab. Channa Saab is not here. I know Channa Saab is also totally sold on this idea. But I must like to acknowledge the great work done by the authors, Dr. Gill. I think he's online. By SDPI team, Eamon Zulfikar Saiba, Abdullah Khalid Saab, and engineer Ahad Nazir Saab. Thank you very much for the great work done on this. And my own team, which is of course Saim is here, and Akib. They've done a good job in terms of coming out with this document, which may still have certain gaps, but I think it will improve as we go along, with the collective effort of people around the table. But also, I also like to acknowledge the presence of Ashfaq Tola Saab. Ashfaq Saab is a very busy man, and मैं आपको बताऊं सच्ची बात ये है कि with his presence here, he came in time, by the way. So already he's been here for 1 hour, and he will be here for another few hours, I guess. His presence also gives me this confidence that this topic is important, and the stakeholders like him, ICAP and all, think that this is important to be covered. So Ashfaq Saab, thank you for your presence, and thank you for giving your time to this and then committing that we will work together in taking this forward. The enormous potential of blue economy to contribute towards economic growth and improvements in livelihoods has not been fully realized by the policymakers of Pakistan, and in fact, globally. Climate change and overexploitation of our blue natural resources are extracting significant costs in terms of loss to marine life and biodiversity. The sustenance and subsistence of communities dependent on blue resources are also being impacted, leading to rising unemployment and poverty. In Pakistan, the institutional capacity remains weak and fragmented of roles and responsibilities between federal, provincial, and local governments have led to a feeble policy framework. At this point, Dr. Saab, I must like to say that the launch of this report seems to be at the right time, because the two main stakeholders within the government setup is the federal government and the provincial government in Sindh and Balochistan. And I think they for the first time after a while, they're on the same page. And perhaps if we can address these issues at this point in time, this will go a long way in terms of making sure that the policy framework at least is in place, and it will then follow through for more detailed work on micro policies. This has also resulted in years of underinvestment in critical infrastructure, including ports, hotels and tourism facilities, water storage, and drainage infrastructure, which becomes even more pronounced during these periods of unprecedented flooding in Pakistan. In many ways, the 2022 super floods are a result of lack of water drainage infrastructure. While Pakistan experienced significantly higher rainfall than average, the damage to crops, roads, and housing infrastructure could have been averted if proper drainage facilities had been in place. In this report, we highlighted the need for Pakistan to develop a larger pipeline for the issuance of green bonds by identifying green assets and scaling up capacity to meet the international standards. Well, my aim is to stretch this green bond to blue bonds as well. But I guess let's take one step at a time. The easier one is to go for the green bond and then perhaps explore the blue bonds as well. The report is also our attempt to educate people on the potential of blue economy. These research projects are part of our organization's philosophy to highlight areas critical to sustainable economy, our future generations, and do not get coverage in the media and or by the conventional research institutions. We being an entity with national presence and public sector DNA, which we are very proud of, consider it our duty to cover all such gaps as thought and policy leader in this affair without any discrimination or territorial considerations. We must realize that all such initiatives may not have immediate impact on our business as such, but in the broader scheme of things, they will surely benefit us sooner or later, directly or in a roundabout way. The medium to long-term view with bigger picture in perspective for organizations like us is the need of the hour. At the outset of talking about what the findings of the report are, I would like to say that the UN General Assembly has played a key part in highlighting the importance of blue economy. In 2015, the UN launched the Sustainable Development Goals, which we all know as SDGs, which incorporated the importance of life below water as SDG goal number 14. Before the commencement of this formal commencement of the seminar, I was talking to Rahat, and she mentioned that on the SDG side, we should perhaps collaborate and see how we can take this discussion forward in a more focused fashion. So we'll be keen to work with you, Rahat, and World Bank on this one. The ocean is not only crucial for economic perspective, but is also a source of food, water, weather variations, and oxygen for human and other species. Dr. Nielsen is here. He educated me today on the impact of mangroves on the largest scheme of things. Great education for me. And perhaps later on we can talk about that as well. The component of blue economy and the forward and backward linkages, which we were talking about, Dr. Sab, earlier as well, are on large and wider scale. It cuts across many constituencies, namely living resources, minerals, energy, coastal and maritime activities, ocean support services, maritime safety and security, raw material for marine biotechnology, and many, many more. Pakistan, with a coastal area of 1,050 kilometers, is blessed with significant blue natural resources. Its blue economy contributes an estimated $1 billion or around 0.4% of the national GDP. Bulk of this contribution is in the form of fisheries, coastal tourism, and maritime revenue, which Dr. Saab also talked about. The more technologically advanced sectors like energy, pharmaceuticals, and minerals are currently non-existent in our blue landscape. The potential to develop blue economy is hampered by disjointed governance, lagging technology, marine pollution, and degradation of mangroves, to mention a few headwinds. And I think it's an opportune time to pursue all these areas and fill these gaps. We have an underdeveloped tourism industry, significantly underdeveloped. Pakistan earns merely 0.3% of GDP, while Thailand earns 18% and Malaysia earns 6%. Domestic coastal tourism revenue is estimated to be $300 million, which is 1.1% of GDP, while according to the Maritime Study Forum, $5 billion could be generated annually for developing coastal and marine tourism infrastructure. Dr. Saab, I was just looking at the report and the strategy of Sri Lanka, and they have been largely dependent on their foreign exchange reserves on tourism, and they are now reviving it again. The new ideas and thoughts have been put around, and they have a very good coastal and marine tourism infrastructure. I think we need to learn from that. It's a good time that we take a step forward and see what are the opportunities available, how can we capitalize on that. Similarly, Pakistan has potential of breeding fish worth $2 billion annually. However, seafood export stands at $450 million, 0.2% of GDP, which is frankly neither here nor there. Fisheries sector accounts for less than 0.4% of GDP. Marine fisheries are depleted and overfished as per UN FAO. High costs are impacting sector's profitability. Pakistan lags behind its neighbors in aquaculture production. Post-harvest processing is underdeveloped. Fish processing in Pakistan is outdated and undercapitalized, unfortunately. The growth in annual trade has grown considerably in the last decade from $50 billion in 2010 to around $80 billion in 2021, 26% of GDP. Nearly 97% of international trade takes place through sea transport, with the remaining being traded with the neighbors through road perhaps or rail. Despite significant volume of trade, total contribution of maritime sector to the economy, as I've said earlier, is merely $183 million. This compares poorly with the regional economies where India earns $6 billion and Bangladesh $5.6 billion US dollars. As per World Bank, it has potential to increase to over $2 billion. Gwadar Port has a huge potential for growth. Talks have talked about it. In the third operational port development under CPAC after Karachi Port and Port Qasim. The government needs significant financing, domestic and external, over medium to long term to modernize existing infrastructure, enhance sustainability of economic activities by reducing pollution of blue resources and creating new clusters of economic activity for uplifting livelihoods of the local communities. And that's where the role of international institutions become prominent. Global sustainable bond market is estimated to be around $1 trillion by 2021, as in now. China and India has taken the lead in terms of issuance of global sustainable bond with over $12 billion raised so far. The sovereign issuance has been slow at $2 billion, while the remaining amount has been raised by corporate entities. In India, the corporate sector raised nearly $7 billion through ESG and green bonds in 2021 compared to $1.4 billion in 2020. The issuance of green bonds has attracted stronger bids, larger order books, increased pricing leverage, and a higher quality investor base than the plain vanilla offering. All of this has led to lower average cost of debt as compared to conventional bonds. And that becomes most relevant in the country like ours, and especially what's happening in the global capital markets, that we should think out of the box, as Dr. Saab also alluded to earlier, and see how the green and the blue bonds can be dovetailed into our offering to the international community and try and tap into that funding for our external account management. The corporate sector issuance of climate-friendly bonds were led by power sector, JSW Hydro, Greenco, Renew Power, Adani Ambani, and Adani Green. However, these issuances were not limited to power sector and include financial services, cement manufacturers, and transport companies. Pakistan issued its first green bond in 2021 with WABDA raising $500 million for a hydropower project. The potential is much more than that. It was just the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion, and we need to work on in a focused fashion to tap this more and see how we can help the um, help in our external account financing through such initiatives. While Pakistan tasted success in its first green bond issuance in 2021, there is a need to develop a larger pipeline by identifying green assets and scaling up capacity to meet the international standards. Blue economy has lagged in terms of tapping the growing pool of ESG funds, previously seen as the frontier of ESG investing. Ocean-related economic opportunities are gradually becoming more mainstream. Renewable energy is leading the way. Offshore wind power plants are growing in Europe, and opportunities are growing in newer avenues such as tidal energy, wave energy, and ocean thermal conversion. In this particular area, I think Netherlands have done a great job, and I think we can resort on their expertise and see how we can sort of borrow certain ideas from there and then replicate the same here. Oslo-based seafood producer Grieg raised 1 billion Norwegian krona in 2020 through a green issue that explicitly targeted to improve and develop improved and sustainable salmon aquaculture. Looking at the emerging market issuance of sustainable debt, power sector leads the way with 35% of all funds raised, which is a good clue for us to pursue. This is followed closely by the transport sector at 29%, with a significant shift towards more fuel-efficient transport, that is trains, motor cars, ships, and airplanes. SNCF Group in the rail industry's leading issuer of green bond, with issuance of 5.7 billion euros. AP Muller Maersk, the world's biggest container shipping company, has issued its first ever green bond of $566 million in 2021 for methanol fueled vessels. Investments in water infrastructure for improving quality and efficient use of resources accounted for 11% of the emerging market green bond issues. The focus of these projects is towards restoring ecosystem by reducing pollution, including dumping of toxic materials, and towards wastewater management. The Republic of Seychelles launched the world's first sovereign blue bond in 2018. Proceeds from the bond will include support for the expansion of marine protected areas, improved governance of priority fisheries, and the development of Seychelles' blue economy. The communities living along the coastline are mostly underprivileged. The economy and livelihood of these rural communities are directly tied to agriculture and livestock and fish farming. ADB reports that 79% of their population is categorized as poor, while 54% of these communities are in the poorest of the poor. The development of coastal tourism facilities, supportive financing from banks like ours, sustainable fishing practices can go a long way in subsiding the poverty of these fraternity. I just had a discussion with Kamran Saab on this, and perhaps we will reach out to World Bank at some point in time jointly with another bank that we talked about, who has been active in this space of extending the financing for this particular community, and see how we can work together in taking it forward. Most of them are unbanked and lack of access to credit facilities. Community-based development opportunities can be enhanced through credit facilities provided by the microfinance institutions. Studies show that coastal communities have benefited significantly through access to microfinance facilities, leading to increase in assets and income. And this is exactly what we have in mind, Rahat, which we will come to the World Bank for the support about. Government should work with State Bank to assist communities associated with fisheries with the provision of incentives and interest-free loans through microfinance to enhance the development of the fishing sector. Now, looking ahead at the end, the government should motivate the private sector for investment and to start a public-private partnership like India example of Kerala state and provide some tax exemptions to promote coastal tourism in Pakistan. Ashfaq Sahab, I would need your attention and involvement on this initiative. How can we work together with you in putting up a proposal which will, be more palatable for the government on this one? MoMA needs to take some effective initiatives related to value addition of fishery products, as our fish export price is low in the region. Fishermen should be provided the support in education capacity building regarding fish preserving methods. And in this particular segment only, Dr. Kamran Saab and myself have just talked about how we can reach out to ADB and World Bank and see how we can work on this particular area. The major issue in financing is the accurate estimation of investment needs of governments and communities. On the other side, gauge the investment willingness of entrepreneurs, investors, and businesses. They need to be systematically networked to initiate an integrated agenda for the development of blue bonds. And perhaps today's effort could also assist in this space. Review procedural inefficiencies and introduce reforms for fostering investor confidence and improving prospects of business and blue economy. I'm sure, Rahat, in the World Bank report that is coming out, this particular aspect is taken care of. We put that in the TORs when you and I were working on it. So we will be looking towards World Bank in suggesting on how this can be worked together. There's a need to establish a network of researchers, industry stakeholders, government personnel, and media to create and disseminate awareness and education regarding the potential and prospects of blue reserves, awareness campaigns, and mainstreaming and dissemination of the information produced by researchers for massive awareness will be useful. So after this, there is another report coming through from World Bank, and then Rahat has suggested that we should engage the group of economists and then work with them to encourage them, Dr. Saab, to come out with, jis tarah aapne bhi farmaya, to come out with non-paper as well. This is the key starting point. Perhaps this is the beginning. There will be certain gaps here. Dr. Saab also talked about a paper which has been done. Perhaps this need to be given more space. And luckily in this particular initiative of today's, we have tied up with the business recorder, and we'll be happy to have the access to that paper that you talked about, or any other one, and then talk to a business recorder and make sure that in our engagement with them, other than this report, we will cover those areas also. A detailed survey and manpower audit of Mercantile Marine Department is needed to detect the issues in capacity and required upgradation to fulfill its functions. I know MoMA is already on it. Special maritime industrial zones are needed to be developed with the installation of latest digital technologies. The government should focus and work with think tanks like SDPI to create awareness on the policy of replanting and to preserve mangroves due to increasing threats of climate change, as their role is very essential for fish breeding and other aquaculture species in the coastal areas, and most importantly, in preventing the flood type situations. In Pakistan, the local boat industry is functioning with lack of government support, and its competitiveness is weak in region. The research report by Mozum in 2012 highlights that the most registered boats in Pakistan have dual registration for Pakistan and Iran, which may be a security threat of the sorts. MoMA needs to look into it perhaps. Real estate development on the coastline is another big opportunity. Pakistan has one of the largest coastlines in the world, which are underdeveloped and could be used for any sort of mixed development in particular. There is a huge potential for that there's a huge potential for that too, taking a cue for the developed economies and their coastlines. The key, however, is to keep the environmental consciousness in perspective, of course, please. In nutshell, The scope and impact of blue economy is so wide and deep that the collaboration of different relevant stakeholders, private and public, financial and research institutions, are pivotal for blue growth in Pakistan. Today's initiative is one such effort in that today's initiative is a humble such effort in this direction. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Zafar Sir, for your opening remarks. And thank you also for alluding to the role of the financial sector on this subject. Really appreciate your insights. And as we had discussed that this shouldn't be a one-off meeting, we should actually have the next in-line meeting to sort of keep track of what you've discussed today and sort of come up with a recap and way forward when we meet at the 25th Sustainable Development Conference in December. Additionally, I think one of the points that you mentioned links well with the online tracker of blue investments, which SDPI wishes to establish, of course, with partners such as yourself, which will be able to we should be able to track online those potential investments or pipeline investments, and at least we'll know where we are falling behind.
Yes.
And what needs to be expedited, and all stakeholders will have access to that online tracker. Let me now move on to the report, which Zafar Saab and Abid Saab have talked about. The online link of this report for those who are joining us virtually is available, and we're going to put it in our chat so that those who would like to download it can do it now. We have two presenters on the report. Let me first invite Mr. Syed Saim Ali Saab, who's also the lead author. Saim Saab, please.
Thank you, Wakar. So we've got a really nice presentation lined up for all of you. So hum detail mein we'll go through the report in much more detail as the presentation runs. So I will just talk briefly about a few things. So when Zafar Saab asked us to undertake this research, so we were all scratching our head. You know, where do we even begin with something? You know, the blue economy is such a vast concept, and to be honest, Zafar Saab, we're still finding our way. You know, the vastness of this topic is so huge that I think we've just scratched the surface as far as this report is concerned. The second very interesting thing was that when the UN gave the call for action through the SDGs, the SDG 14, life underwater. So the kind of numbers that were shared in that report are quite shocking. So I would request all of you, whenever you get an opportunity, please do go through those numbers. So, and this is a 2015 report. Data obviously is even further backdated, probably 2010 numbers. And by that time, 30% of the marine habitat had been completely destroyed. 30% of our fish stocks globally had been depleted. 44% of our coastal reefs, they have been depleted. So irreversible damage has been done to the coastal reefs. And this is 2010 data that we are talking about. So you can well imagine how much further damage has been inflicted since then. 95% of all marine life contains microplastics. So the level of pollution that has been caused globally should be a big issue for our policymakers. So while the UN initially focused on the conservation of our valuable blue resources and the problem of the free rider problem, in which we treat these blue resources as a free rider and everybody is exploiting this resource to their max without thinking of the consequences. uh, we now see that there is a new thinking developing around the blue economy, which incorporates not just the conservation part of the thing, but also looks at livelihoods. So we are now increasingly focused on how we can develop sustainable industry, sustainable economic activity, which can be built around these blue resources. So according to the OECD, um, the scope of the blue economy has expanded significantly from conservation to energy, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's exploration of fossil fuels, and more and more towards value added industries. So marine biotechnology is a fast upcoming sector. Jisme big pharmaceuticals are increasingly making new investments, and they see huge potential for developing new cures and new medicines using the blue resources. As Abid Saab and Zafar Saab pointed out, Pakistan too has a huge potential as far as developing our blue resources. We've got a massive coastal line. We are blessed with a lot of these unique blue resources, which other countries probably do not have. Uh, but despite that, the availability of resources, we see it plays a very small part as far as our overall economic activity is concerned. So $1 billion is what we estimate. We understand there are other studies that estimate higher than that. And which really shows the loss of opportunity, both in terms of conserving our precious resources and improving the livelihoods of communities that live along the coastal belt. On green financing, as Zafar Saab rightly mentioned, it's a growing opportunity, one in which we have tasted some success. So we did launch our first green bond last year, and we saw that there was very good participation as far as that issuance is concerned. And globally, we see that there is a growing interest, and almost $1 trillion worth of green bonds have been issued globally, which makes up around 10% of the total global bond markets. So that's very, very significant. And in such a short period to have grown to that size indicates both the availability of resources and the growing adoption of the UN SDGs, where companies are pledging more and more resources towards the green technology. As we mentioned, our neighbors are taking full advantage of all of this. So China and India are leading the way as far as issuance of the green bonds is concerned, $12 billion each. And interestingly, it is not the sovereigns which are taking the lead in this. It is the corporate sector which is taking the lead. And I think that really is a good lesson for us to learn, that, we don't really, we shouldn't be really looking at our governments to raise this kind of capital, but if the right incentives are given by our government, then even the private sector can step in and take advantage of these resources which are available globally. 35% of all global green investment has gone into the power sector, and that's an area in which Pakistan really needs to focus. Almost 29% in transport. Again, an area on which this report we've highlighted how far we are versus other regional economies. And 11% has gone towards water infrastructure. And again, that's an area in which we are lacking behind. So the OECD tells us that the annual requirement to meet the goals of COP15 is about $5 to $7 billion annually. So that's the kind of money that we should expect that the green bonds or the green investments will be raising for new investments in the uh, green energy area. Uh, so that's one area where we require large investments, which is really on the infrastructure side, building up ports, shipping, energy infrastructure. And on the other hand, it is all about the sustainable livelihoods of the local communities there. And as this report points out, the numbers are pretty alarming. So despite being so close to these vast resources, the people living in our coastal communities, we see that they don't have any ownership. 79% of the population that lives along our local, coastal lines are classified as poor, and 54% are classified as the poorest of the poor. So that really highlights another key problem, which is that our local communities are not partners in the development of these resources. And that's an area that does need to change. The banks are playing a key part. We are seeing increasingly that the development focus is being pushed by our central bank, and new products are coming into the market. So whether we saw the Mera Ghar scheme of the central bank, in which low-cost housing was being pushed, and similarly the Kamyab Jawan, Kamyab Pakistan schemes, which were giving interest-free loans through the microfinance institutions to these local communities. So we really need to look at whether that can be expanded with a focus towards these communities that live in our coastal belt, because they have very specific needs. Their livelihoods depend on the fishing opportunities that are available on agriculture. And so those needs can be fulfilled through focus using these products which are available in the market. And as Zafar Saab mentioned, we have a lot of success stories globally, which we can learn from. And we've seen that in Kerala, where through incentives, the private sector has made significant investment in developing the coastline, developing the tourism industry in that area. And currently, so it has created like 1.4 million jobs in the last 4-5 years since the focus started on the tourism industry. And today, about 23% of the workforce is employed in the tourism sector of that region. So I'll end over there, and I'll hand it over to Waqar Saab, and we'll run you through the presentation where we share the key findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Sansab. I think for the later part, I'd request my colleague Ahad Nazir to continue.
Thank you, sir. Since the overall economic potential of the blue economy has majorly been covered, so I think it will be appropriate if we can go to the port city development part. That actually is my biggest concern, because one of the cities that I admire, Karachi, is suffering from things that basic amenities are not available there. So maybe our ports are functioning okay, and maybe we have developed the competencies and the capabilities of handling those ports and even developing new ones. But what about the port cities? So the basic infrastructure at the back end that is required for running of those ports, I think that is where I and my team from SDPI, including Ayman and Abdullah, we came in. So our main focus for port city development, and that was primarily from literature, and we also conducted some qualitative interviews with some experts. They were around 4 main things. And if we look at Karachi, I think we can identify that these are the main 4 things that are wrong with that city at the moment. Like for instance, number one is the energy infrastructure, and I will not only talk about generation. There is a lot of generation potential as well in the coastal areas, but we have to talk beyond generation, and that is transmission and distribution. Our friends at K Electric are facing a lot of criticism all around the year, just because of the sort of infrastructure arrangement, I think, which should have been developed at a very early stage, and that should have been part of the earlier urban planning of Karachi. Number two, I think, is the water. From unofficial sources, I've been told that a quarter tanker is now being sold at around 15,000 rupees in some parts of Karachi, and and this is not for clean drinking water. This is not drinking water. This is the normal usage water that we only use for washing and other things. And if we take both of these into account, the RO plants that have been set up in Karachi, and Karachi, of course, was blessed because the Indus was flowing very near to Karachi, and we had chances of creating some artificial and some natural canals, like for instance, the Malir Nadi and the Kurangi Nala. Both of them were naturally part. So the water was not an issue in Karachi initially, which it is now due to the expanding infrastructure. So the third issue, I think, is the urban development that needs to be controlled. And I think Zafar Saab's point, especially with regards to the real estate development in port cities and in coastal areas of Pakistan, I think we need to be very considerate of the fact that basic amenities should be available there. And the last one is the waste disposal. So I think the marine tourism will never flourish if we still have one of the dirtiest ports or beaches as we are seeing in Karachi. So these are the main four areas that we focused on. There are, of course, opportunities here as well. So the ocean, in addition to its economic benefits, also gives us, it's basically the biggest source of carbon sequestration. I am on a personal front working with some friends in Alaska on an Arctic carbon sequestration project. So and the oceans actually account for more sequestration of carbon than the Arctic or let's say our north part. So I think this is where the blue bonds and the green bonds come in, and their importance actually goes beyond the only the GDP that we have discussed, that this we can go for only the sectors including tourism and ports and trade. So just talking, the next slide. So I'll just skip through because I think we have talked enough about fisheries and even the trade. I'll just go towards the end and talk with regards to some of the public policy related challenges that might be required there. So I think one of the issues is that and I think we had a perfect opportunity to witness it today, that Dr. Anil had a paper and we didn't know about it. So I think the industry and academia needs to have a better linkage. And this is, we need to convert that academic research into sort of the language that the private sector or the government and civil society partners understand. And this is basically the role I think SDPI needs to see for itself. Next one is with regards to establishment of different development funds and blue diplomacy, which is again already covered. So I'll just go to the last part, which is with regards to the public policy related issues. We see a lot of potential areas that we talk about, but unfortunately, these are some of the issues that are regularly coming in most of the good, even the best of the initiatives that we try to do in Pakistan. So number one, I think we need to think strategically. There is a need for a long-term vision We need to know where we need, what is our goal, because in most of the very long-term initiatives that even the government and and of course the public-private partnerships go on to, I think somewhere in the middle we forget why we started. So I think we need to be sure what is our goal, and we need to set that goal accordingly. Uh, and of course, once we know our goal, then we can set the monitoring and evaluation parameters the framework that we can follow on the way. Another issue that is coming again from the literature is regarding the coordination between different departments. Whether we are talking about regulators, whether we are talking about the decision makers, whether we are talking about the policy makers, I think it needs to be holistic. No one government or private entity can make decisions on blue economy as a whole. So we need to be as inclusive as we can here, and we have tried to include all the relevant stakeholders from the private sector side. We have tried to include people from the civil society side, and of course the government. But I think this can expand. This is something that the stakeholders, we need to expand that. Then of course we need to be very inclusive. Closed door policies will not work. I think we should learn it by now. We should be able to, I think discussing it with the relevant stakeholders will of course help you in better advocacy of this of that initiative, as well as creating a sort of a critical mass that is required for the kickstart that we need. And last is the policy consistency. I think we need to put boundaries on politics as well. We need to be sure that some things are not there to be discussed, and some things need absolute consensus. We have talked a lot about Charter of Economy. Dr. Abid's recent article talks about it as well. So I think these are things that we really need a strong consensus on. These are not things that can just happen in a 5-year tenure. We need a longer term vision for it, and I think we need to be and of course in the coming meetings we will try to include the political, of course the current political environment was also not very conducive, but I think in the future we can definitely look for including the political stakeholders in this dialogue as well, because I think their buy-in is probably most important. So just last point before I hand over back to Dr. Bakar is that I think we need to, I think we have set the agenda, and there have been debates. We discussed similar things in the multimodal conference that was organized by Manzil, I think a couple of in March, March of this year. But I think we have got a very good opportunity that SDPI this time is partnering with Ministry of Climate Change for the 27th COP. Dr. Abid will be attending that. So I think we need to put that agenda there as well, that this is something that SDPI is looking forward to. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to Dr. Bakar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahad. Thank you, Syed, once again for this effort. One of the key takeaways was inclusiveness and stakes for local communities. So thank you for making that point. Now, I understand that we are falling behind time, and we really, because of our online participation, we also want to end on time as well. We do have one participation from China as well, but until we get them online, we'll open the floor now. Because I do understand that a lot of people have worked in this area, which has just been explained in the presentation. So the floor is open for your interventions, please.
May I add, if you allow me?
Sir, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sir, actually, we are discussing and we have discussed a very important subject, and this is beginning of no end, I think, and I believe this. When we talk about blue economy is a very wide term, and obviously you cannot just clip it in this booklet. This is again a beginning, and it's a very good beginning. Let me salute both the institutes for entities for their valuable contribution on this. The basic purpose of blue economy is to cope up with the water crisis. We are witnessing a water crisis right now, and obviously, this is need of the hour. As my worthy brother has said, that half of a container or maybe a Bowser is costing us 15,000 rupees in most part of the Karachi. Yes, it is true, but it is 7,500 for a 3,000 gallon. We need to have new development, new avenues in the economic development as well. I mean, this is another goal which we need to address. Last but not the least, we have to pursue something to just give some new avenues for the maritime development as well. So these should be the ring fencing of the goals which we need to address going further. Now, coming back to a few statistics, which I think I'm sure the knowledgeable and the August roundtable is knowing about, but let me just repeat it for you. We have got 3 billion people, they are utilizing their livelihood from blue economy around the world. 40% of the population is living on the coastal side. I mean, this is among us. 80% of the global trade, and in case of Pakistan, 95% of the global trade is being pursued through ocean. So this is again a very significant area which we have not attracted so far and which we have not developed so far. Then before nationalization, let me just now come to our maritime people. We had 71 vessels of PNSC, or various companies, private and public sector. We have privatized it, and after separation of Bangladesh, we left with 61. Today, I mean, unfortunately, we have only 9. So, sir, 13. Okay. मेरे पास 9 की फिगर थी, कल आपकी किसी एडमिरल साहब ने मुझे बताई है. ठीक है जी, नहीं कोई बात नहीं. Sir, the avenues which we need to explore, obviously, which is again a very long-term task, but we have to designate it and divide it between short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Number one is obviously to create an aquaculture. Two, then biotech and marine genetic growth. This is very important and which need to be addressed from all the perspectives. Then submarine mining. This is again a very important topic. I mean, we need in-depth studies of all these points. And obviously, as I said, this is just a starter. Then tourism. What is stopping us from providing a very huge coastal bay, a very good beaches? I mean, as Abid Sahib has said, so many beaches between Karachi and Gwadar. The only bottleneck is law and order. We know we can earn billions of dollars through tourism, and this can become the largest exporting sector, in fact, in the service sector of the country. But what is stopping us and why it is stopping us? We need to soul search that. Fisheries are developed, but just go to Karachi fishery. I think my worthy friend has visited there, and you can see the dilapidated situation of fisheries in Pakistan. We have no facilities whatsoever. Being one of the largest producer of fish meal in Pakistan, which is feeding 42% of the world. Not only Pakistan, but this marine fish, they contribute 42% of the world food. But what we are doing? Nothing. I think, sir, this is really important for us to address these issues. As far as 2-3 issues are concerned, when I look at the presentation, accounting framework is required. Yes, we are available round the clock. Just connect to me. You all have my number. You can simply contact me. My team out of Islamabad will help you out. They will be hands and gloves with you. As far as tax exemption, as Zafar Sahib has said, I think again, yes, we have to just lock it. We have to frame it. We have certain tax exemptions given, but with that with the IMF agreement, it has a limited scope. So once again, I mean, for the development of economy, we can play around. We can talk to them. with the help of World Bank, because World Bank looks after the taxation side. IMF just bang on them. If they are satisfied with some exemptions, I think, and this is again a very important aspect. So we need the help of World Bank. We will volunteer. We will give you the required data, required exemption structures, and foolproof, I think, mechanism to address these issues. So with these words, I think I'm grateful again to you all for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for raising the accounting and tax treatment of blue investments. I do understand that if the forum allows me, there are connectivity challenges. So three of our colleagues, if I can go up to them first, So let me first take one of the co-authors, Dr. Gill, who's in Bhavalpur. Then Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt Saab is speaking from China. And then I'd like to come to Additional Secretary Chandna Saab. So Dr. Gill, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wakar and all the honorable participants from SDPI, Bank of Punjab, and the experts of blue economy. It was indeed a privilege to work with some of the seasoned professionals who have been working on blue economy for quite a long time. I think much has been discussed by Dr. Suleri as well as Mr. Zafar Masud, and one of the lead authors, Mr. Syed. I just want to add 2-3 points into that. First one is that Pakistan not only having the blue economy potential, but also Pakistan is blessed with the huge youth potential as well. There is a dire need to synchronize both the potential so that Pakistan can get most of its blue resources through providing financial opportunities to the youth of Pakistan. And particularly here comes the role of academia as well. Academic institutions should launch degree programs and should work towards developing blue curricula. I think Dr. Anil Salman is sitting over there. He's mentor of the mentors of the people who are working on the blue economy and economic security as well. Without, as mentioned by one of the participants, that what stops Pakistan to promote tourism opportunities? Yes, it is agreed that without providing law and order, proper law and order conditions, we can't promote our blue tourism. And unfortunately, tourism only contributes towards our GDP that is less than 0.3%. And Pakistan is at the bottom of 150 countries with regards to statistics on tourism as well. The second thing is that, yes, there is a missing link between academia and the corporate sector. But the welcoming steps are there. People are researching this area. Institutions are, getting clue of understanding the importance of blue economy. Recently, I was attending one of the course on blue economy arranged by the International Ocean Academy and Ocean Academy Pakistan. I think these steps are welcoming, and they will create awareness among the policymakers, among the stakeholders, and academia and research R&D organizations as well. But the main moot point is that for all that we need finances. Here comes the role of financial institutions. They can, fund research projects. They can establish blue economy laboratories, blue governance laboratories in different educational institutions. Unfortunately, under CPAC project, we have established more than 10 CPAC Center of Excellence in different higher education institutions across Pakistan. But we are unable to see some, concrete publications or concrete research efforts from those institutions that can, promote blue economy or to create awareness among the stakeholders. I think this report is beginning, and there may be many gaps as well as identified by one of the participants. But I think institutions are realizing the importance of this very neglected area, and soon we will be creating synergies and to promote awareness among the stakeholders, and definitely the future is blue. With this,
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
thank
Dr.
all the participants and SDPI and Bank of Punjab for providing this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sab. And I think others from academia around this table will also take lead from what you've suggested. You mentioned CPEC. On that, I think we have very good institutional memory available. So I'll move on to Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt Sab, who's speaking from China.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me because I'm a little farther from all of you. So brilliant. So, sir, what I'll do is that I'll just state certain facts and I will let the House to decide and make their own decision. By the way, my name is Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt, and most of you do not know I'm also a former seafarer. So I'm quite passionate about blue economy, and therefore I would state, and I was also the member of the committee on the Gwadar Master Plan and the member of the committee on the CPEC long-term plan. So bear with me if I am a bit harsh on certain points because I will just state facts. And I would ask you questions, each one of you sitting there from the decision making, from the corporate sector, from me now representing academia because I'm right now wearing that hat as a university professor. I'm here to do research on the initiative that China is launching in the great meeting next month on the Global Development Initiative, GDI. So a lot is happening in China as we speak, and this is the time that we should be looking at China for at least in the month of October. Very, very important. So now coming back to the point that we are here, sir, in the long-term plan of Gwadar, long-term plan of CPEC, clearly in terms of tourism, 1+5 concept has been given. And that clearly demonstrates the Chinese interest in investing in our blue economy's tourism. 1 represents the road and 5 are the towns that they identified in their plan that they made. And I vividly remember one of their Professor Du, and I met him recently, mentioning to me at that time that you have this beautiful coast of more than 1,100 kilometers and you are yet to develop one single 4-star hotel. We do have one PC in that 1,100 kilometers, but that PC for our standard may be 4-star, but for Chinese standard, it was even less than 3. So this was his statement that is made. So what stops us from doing that? This is clearly illustrated in the long-term plan of CPEC. It is each of our port, the DWT, the number of ships coming and going, and how would that lead to development of Gwadar is clearly articulated in the monographic study, which was approved in the 2015's Joint Cooperation Committee of CPEC. So what stops us from looking at that development agenda? Because why I'm saying this, that I keep hearing the long-term planning, the short-term planning, and the mid-term planning. But what about the plans that were already made, and who's going to work on them? The third part, because now I'm in KP, so blue economy, and I'm the only province who has done an MOU with Gwadar Port in terms of giving them human resource and raw material for the Gwadar Port development. Now I would come to the Gwadar Port's development because in that we came to Shenzhen and we discussed because Shenzhen was a fishing port and we have done, and they clearly explained to us why and how there are so many similarities between Gwadar and Shenzhen, and how incrementally step by step you can also develop. Or agar aap Gwadar ka master, if you look at the Gwadar master plan, it clearly gives direction that it will be not in the governance model that we have in our rest of the ports. It will be clearly like Jabali Ali, Salalah or Shenzhen, which will have a corporate style CEO model of development. And that decision was to be taken by Balochistan cabinet, and that's pending because of various reasons. I won't go into details of that. But clearly they said, and we agreed to them, that AC and DC and GPA, GDA model won't work. It would have to be under a CEO's model that is like happening in rest of our ports, rest of our competitive ports. Now coming back to the Belt and Road Initiative, we always talk on the land part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and we forget sometimes the importance that China gives on the maritime sector or the maritime Silk Road. Each time you would hear, and I heard this in 2017 Belt and Road Forum, where I was with a different prime minister, and in the 2000 BRI Forum when I was with a different prime minister. Both times, President Xi spoke about the Maritime Silk Road more than Belt and Road Initiative. And would you believe that the only port that he referred to was Gwadar? So while sitting in China, if they can discuss and their president can mention Gwadar, what stops us from developing Gwadar? And each stakeholder, I know there are a lot of stakeholders sitting here, even from the Maritime Academy, Maritime Ministry or Maritime Affairs. And we changed the name of the Ministry of Maritime Affairs to actually give impetus to the work that was supposed to happen. So lastly, sir, I would just give few recommendations, and this, if that could be included or incorporated in your report, because here in the GDI discussion, wherever I go and discuss the maritime sector, they start from mangroves and then go into eco-friendly development of ports, because clearly as our economy grows, and inshallah it will grow, we would need ports. And we need to now identify which port will have its own role. Clearly, Port Qasim has now become an energy-driven port. Karachi is choked because of the transportation challenges we have, and Gwadar would probably be working on Afghan transit trade or some of the other trade that we have with the neighboring countries. So for more, we need to develop the ports that are mentioned in the monographic study and also in the CPEC long-term plan. There was a port to be developed, and I won't mention its name because then it becomes public. It's there in the CPEC long-term plan, which was the port which was supposed to be developed to support Dhabeji Special Economic Zone. So Dhabeji is still not there, and what to talk of the port, and because whenever the economies grow, the requirement for ports grows within the same. So, sir, please, I would just request the House to just look at the plans that have already been articulated, and I'm so glad that I work with SDPI as their honorary research fellow. So just go back to the drawing board again and look at the plans that were made. And now that the joint working group for CPEC long-term plan is again after 2 years happening, we must have a clear plan for the maritime sector, because Chinese wants us to have a clear plan for the maritime sector, because that gives support to the BRI maritime Silk Road. So this is all I have to say.
Thank you, Dr.
Next JCC, which is scheduled perhaps in November or early December. Here I hear them maybe putting a complete plan in as far as the maritime sector is concerned. I would also like to highlight one more thing. In the 3 years of the former government, there was a Karachi Development Initiative in which the Chinese had given the entire plan for in public-private partnership. Perhaps that is not being discussed anymore. So I would also request the House to look at that Karachi development. And if you need any documents, I'll share them with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sab, and thank you for sharing the institutional memory as well as the way forward. If Additional Secretary Saab is online, Asad Rafi Channa Sab, if I can request him for his intervention. Sir, can you hear us? So you're, आप शायद mute पे हैं, sir.
Make a few comments, Dr. with your permission. Very, very enlightening for me, the comments that has come through around the table. First of all, Dr. Bakar, that you talked about on online tracking. Let's talk about it. We'll engage our digital banking team and see how we can work together. We earlier talked about the SME index with Ashfaqullah Sahab, who are partnering there with Salman and his institution Prime. setting up something on those lines. We can talk about doing something here as well, and we will then extend our hand to Kamran Saab also, how we can work together on this one. Um, uh, 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 Saim talked about pharmaceutical sector investment. The unfortunate piece is, Dr. Saab, that, and this has happened across all the sectors, not just the pharma. The exit of the multinational institutions have kind of taken that intellectual or the ability to take these kind of out of the box ideas away from Pakistan. But having said that, our private sector in pharma is very progressive. I could think of 3 or 4 names which are very progressive companies, and I think we can reach out to them and then ask them, Kamran Sahab, that they can also play their due role in terms of supporting, which Dr. Anil Salman Sahab has in detail covered in his presentation. I'm looking forward to that document, and inshallah usko hum karwayenge, we publish in the and how pharma can play a role there. 2-3 badi companies and we talk about it, and I'll help you in hooking you up with them. Saim also talked about the external account support. I think this is a perfect time, and we must ask the EAD and the Ministry of Finance and Debt Office to look at the possibilities of raising funding with the flooding and reason of those flooding to be the climate change aspect, which we are victim to. I think this is a perfect time for us to go out and raise some serious blue, green bond funding from the world. Engineer Nazir Saab talked about port cities. I have a very, I would say strong, but I have my own thinking on this one. I think I'm sorry, I'm making a very, maybe perhaps a very harsh comment here, but I think Karachi port doesn't need to exist anymore. We need to wrap it up. I've been the advocate of that. Kamran Sahab is aware of it. Reason is that it creates pollution. It has now become very congested. It has serious traffic issues. It has safety issues, and we need to move that port out from there. And इसमें कोई इतनी अजंबे की बात नहीं है. There's nothing unusual that we are talking about here. I don't know. I think it's New Jersey, which is 1/3 owned by the port. Maybe Kamran Sahab would be aware of it. So if it was a port before and then converted into a city, why can't we do the similar thing here as well? Things evolve. We need to evolve as well. We can't just keep on dragging on that one. Having said that, I think Dr. Butt talked about, alluded to, he didn't mention the name. I'm happy to mention the name. Is I think if he's referring to that one, is KT Bandar. I think the next big thing
KT
is
Bandar.
KT Bandar. The next big thing is KT Bandar. We need to work on KT Bandar, moving the things away from Karachi port to KT Bandar. And there also the focus, we need to make this into more focused sectors. For example, the industrial state that is attached to it, if by default, Port Qasim has emerged as an energy port. So perhaps we need to have more export-driven activities related to fisheries. Maybe I'm just throwing this idea at Gwadar, and then we need to have a similar sort of offering at KT Bandar as well. So that strategic thinking is required on these 3 ports, and then moving KPT out of the equation and convert this into a more, I'm emphasizing again and again and again, environmentally friendly mixed development in that area. Because, when we talk about real estate and development, we immediately, it comes to our mind that perhaps there will be a compromise on that one. मेरे ख्याल से आज की जो ये नशिस्त है, this has been a big success. And you know why? Because we have been able to rope in one independent voice and institution, which is Akhraj-Tola Sahab, in this whole thing. So his commitment in terms of working together with us, we should capitalize on it, ICAP, and see how we can take it forward. And Kamran Sahab, you had, financial institution, think tank, and now you have ICAP there as well. We'll be happy to work together, and I think it's a big success in bringing and bringing and pulling and a very important stakeholder together in this initiative. But Dr. Bhatt talked about the CPAC plans. We must look at them. But Dr. Saab, let me just warn you here that there are, we must look at those plans, but we need to have our organic strategy and planning done on this one. The reason for that is that everybody has their own ideas and agendas. When I talk about larger multilateral and bilateral institutions that can work together on this one, they have varied objectives. For example, when we talk about something like World Bank, their focus is, although it's broad-based, their focus is primarily on the infrastructure side. When we talk to UN, they're very, very environmentally focused. When we talk about CPAC or the government per se, we are also again too focused on the infrastructure side. And then there is the provincial government level. There is a completely different strategy going, where they are just doing drip sort of support for the local communities there, here and there. So I completely point well taken from you that plans have to be seen for CPAC, but I think we need to synchronize with World Bank, with UN, and with other stakeholders like ADB and all, to make sure that the strategy that we come out with, and that our effort in this direction. And I completely admit that this is not a conclusive document. This is just the beginning, which have huge gaps, but it's a good starting point, and we need to devise a strategy based on the input from all these institutions. And synchronization is critical, to my mind, of all these brains in putting that strategy together. आज शुरू करेंगे, इसमें कई सदियां लगेंगी, कहीं लगेंगे to get to a point where we want to be, but कट ही जाएगा सफर आहिस्ता आहिस्ता. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, sir. I want to bring in Admiral Ehsan.
Dr. Wakar, before I leave, I just want to make a small statement because I have to leave for a discussion on GDI. In 2018, prior to 2018, the JWG was Gawadar Port City Development JWG. In 2018 and in 2019, finally, after a lot of discussions, and then the Minister for Planning, Khusro Bakhtiar Sahab, and I was representing that, it is now the JWG for Gawadar Port Development and Blue Economy. So we should be aware of this fact. And naturally, when the long-term plan was made, it was made by the Pakistani experts, taking data and support and learning from the lessons that Chinese had. It was always sort of, I won't say totally organic, but partially organic. But we must leverage the blue economy part now included in CPAC. That's my point.
Noted, sir. Admiral Ehsan, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. Let me start on a lighter vein. If you want to uplift blue economy, announce a housing scheme in Arabian Sea in the exclusive economic zone, and there will be a mad rush and millions will pour in. A very useful document. I have scurried through it, browsed the recommendations. I would most humbly suggest that any discussion on blue economy would be incomplete without the participation of those stakeholders who breathe and live blue economy. And I'm particularly referring to port operators, shipbuilders, shipbreakers, importers, exporters, surveyors, dredging companies, fisheries, mining companies, exploration companies, etc. Because if they were included in this study, then you would have been pleased to know that all the recommendations except one, except on tourism, are already in various stages of implementation. And I'll be glad to elaborate if desired, if your time permits. Allow me to make a few points on the points which have been made. A point was made that the ports in Pakistan are made for the sake of ports. Absolutely true in the case of Gwadar. And I would hasten to add that not only for the sake of the port, but also for windfall effects. And the one port in this connection is Pakistan Deepwater Container Port, which has a very fancy name now, South Asia Pakistan Terminal Limited, something like that. Otherwise, studies are available, research is available, which suggest that Karachi Port and the Port Qasim are sufficient to meet the requirements of Pakistan for the next 50 years. We don't need any third port in the presence of these ports. As of today, the occupancy at KPT, Karachi Port, is 45%. It is more than 50% vacant. So we really don't need any, and I'll respectfully disagree with you, Dr. Saab. We should never move Karachi Port. It's a natural harbor, our only natural harbor. Ports are not airports, which you can move. Ports cannot be moved because of natural reasons. You talked about, someone talked about inland waterways. An initiative was launched about 5-6 years back. It went to advanced stages. Punjab, mashallah, has a network of canals which can be used as inland waterways. Like any good initiative in the Waterways, it has died its death. Tourism, sir, we have two taboos. Law and order was mentioned. The other is cultural taboos. But we have a beautiful island called Astola. If we can develop tourism facilities, maritime or blue tourism facilities at Astola, then we will automatically cater to the law and order situation and the cultural taboos. Otherwise, we do not expect any blue tourism along our coast. Pollution was mentioned. The world's deepest point, which is also referred to as the Challenger Deep, it is deeper than Mount Everest, is high. When a researcher dived to this point, he actually dived to this point, what did he find? Plastic. How did plastic get to Challenger Deep? And Challenger Deep is way to the east of Philippines. It's not next to Pakistan, it's way off to Philippines, and you found over there. And finally, Dr. Saab, something about fishing. Fishing everywhere in the world tapers off. We do not expect more than $500 million worth of fish exports. There's a technical reason for that. And the reason is that you can, for a year or two, go beyond even 500 or touch $1 billion, but then you will exhaust all the fish resources from the sea. And this has happened in the world. In the North Sea, cod has vanished. Many Scottish fishing villages have simply packed their bags, they've gone deserted. The fishing business has gone in Scotland. And elsewhere also, we have tuna shortages and other shortages. So I'm afraid that the maximum possible revenues you can gain from fishing is $500 million, not more than that. I'll stop on that note because in deference to the shortage in time, I think I shouldn't speak, although I had a number of other points. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, sir. I'm told that Asad Saab is back online. Asad Rafi Channa Saab, Additional Secretary, if he can hear us. Asad Saab, can you hear me? आप सर म्यूट पे हैं जी हो सकता है इन्होंने दोबारा मैसेज करवाया कि he's we can only request him to unmute. हम उनको unmute कर नहीं सकते जी जी नहीं उन्होंने मैसेज भिजवाया था probably जी any other inputs we do have 10 minutes जी please then Umar sir
Thank you.
जी I'll come to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate Zafar Masud sir. And he very humble mentioned about myself that working on blue economy in Pakistan. It is actually 2019 when we started to discussion on blue economy. So Zafar Saab was introduced by then Federal Minister to Rahat talk about blue economy with Zafar Saab. So I had a chance to speak to him on Zoom, and he very eloquently mentioned about the blue economy. He had a complete homework and he committed with the concept note. So from there, we started our journey on blue economy. So in the World Bank, we are working globally on the blue economy in other countries, and we have some dedicated funds resources available in the bank. It's called Pro Blue, which is by other countries working. So after a meeting with the Zafar Saab, I managed to get the potential, and then I managed to get some funds and resources from Pro Blue Trust Fund, where we started the working on the blue economy roadmap development for Pakistan. So, and beside that, we have, I think all the discussion we have started discussed here right about, and in the report also, the more or less the similar issues. Everybody knows since I'm working in this field in 20 years. So when I started my career, I was hearing the same issues is still there. There is nothing change. There is nothing progress. Everybody's talking, new people coming, they're talking the same things. For me, I'm hearing my ears since 20 years, these issues. So there is a time to have action on it, and I'm very happy that after 2 years journey, people talking, not me and Zafar Saab, actually, all of us talking about, and especially this blue economy issue basically is not with the environmentalists, because I'm basically environmentalist, and environmentalists know very well about blue economy and importance, everything. The issue, the good, I think challenging is that the champions, we need champions from various sectors to move this forward, this potential sector. And I think the Shafaq Saab mentioned this is one of the good sign we should move, and especially the Bank of Punjab and other financial institutes and other organizations are working in blue economy. I met various people during the consultation of development of these reports. This is analytical study. We are requested by the Ministry of Maritime Affairs to develop the roadmap, blue economy roadmap guidelines, to give them action plan to how to start from where. So we are working on it, and I'm sure that in the next few months, I will invite all of you, most of you, to discuss on the challenges of the BE, because the biggest challenge, of course, we have a potential, but the biggest challenge is the governance. And as Zafar Saab rightly mentioned, that when I talk to the Sindh government, they are talking in different lines. There is an issue of 20 nautical miles. There is an issue of 250 nautical miles. Who owns, who's doing? So I think we need to, like this type of forum we have to invite all the people. I think the next time we should have to invite all the stakeholders to discuss their issues and challenges, and to work on the common objectives and goals of the blue economy, I think, in this country. So I stop here, and maybe to Kamran sir.
Thank you. Ji Kamran sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Before I shed light on the Ministry of Maritime Affairs endeavor to promote blue economy in Pakistan, I would like to appreciate the contribution of Mr. Zafar Masud, CEO and President Bank of Punjab, who is at the forefront to explore the potential of blue economy in Pakistan. He had been a member of the advisory committee of Ministry of Maritime Affairs, and I know under his leadership, Bank of Punjab was one of the few banks which initiated the disbursement of loans for fishermen for upgradation of their boats under the auspices of the Prime Minister's initiative. The contribution of SDPI and the leadership of Dr. Abid Suleri is recognized by researchers and academia the world over. Before I just try to answer questions which have been raised by the August participant. In Pakistan, we are facing with the dilemma of sea blindness. So we are unable to exploit this sector to its full potential to gain the linked economic benefits. After the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, most of the maritime functions were devolved to the provinces. industries. So we had a challenge how to bring those functions which are dispersed at various levels, at various ministries and divisions back to the ministry or the relevant ministry. So for the last few years, there has been some realization on the part of government to exploit the true potential of oceans and blue economy linked to it. So I will just try to deliberate quickly what initiative the ministry has taken despite all these challenges after the May 18 amendment we have. To address that challenge of dispersed subjects in the various ministries, a committee was formed by the Prime Minister, which formed up its recommendations and which were placed before the Cabinet Committee on Institutional Reforms. The recommendations were how the dispersed subjects can be brought into under Ministry of Maritime Affairs. These proposals were approved in October 2021, and later the federal cabinet also ratified these recommendations. But unfortunately, they have still not been notified by the cabinet division due to reasons unknown. Like Madam Rahat has just mentioned about the study, we asked the World Bank through Economic Affairs Division to provide the technical assistance to conduct study in the blue economy and develop a roadmap for the development of blue economy in Pakistan. The report has been delivered. The first draft has been delivered to us, and we are reviewing it at the ministry level. Another initiative which we took in the ministry was amending the mercantile marine policy, which was notified in November 2019. The revised policy provides incentives to private sector to invest in shipping sector by giving various tax incentives. Presently, PNSC has 13 vessels, and they are, according to their business plan, they intend to increase the number of vessels. By the way, the carrying capacity of PNSC is historically highest at this level. It's close to 1 million tons deadweight, I think. The next thing which we did was regarding the fisheries sector. There was the deep sea fishing policy 2018. This was exploited time and again by the license holders. We repealed that policy, and instead we amended the exclusive fishery zone regulations of fishing rules 1990 in 2021, which were notified in August 2021, and their aim was to value addition in the export of sea products. We also initiated digitalization of ports real estate to bring about transparency and ascertain the market worth of KPT assets. Tax and incentives for Gwadar Port and Free Zone were approved in the Finance Act 2020. As you are aware, the concession agreement between the port operator was signed in the year 2007. And since then, we have been holding those incentives which we had committed in the concession agreement. So this was done in last 3 years in the year 2020. Gwadar, why the Gwadar is not developing, the major issue had been the connectivity of Gwadar with the rest of the country. There was a road connecting the Gwadar port, East Bay Expressway, but its right of way was not clear, and there were certain institutes which were, stationed on the route of that road, and it's only a year, 2 years ago when we managed to clear the right of way of the road, and now the road has been completed. It's 100% complete for operations. In fact, it has been inaugurated by the present Prime Minister as well. Regarding the port city development, a coastal development, a project with the name of Karachi Comprehensive Coastal Development Zone project has been included in the CPEC list. The project will facilitate a foreign direct investment of about $3.8 billion. Likewise, we have an issue regarding the Gwadar port, smart port city. There are some conflict between the two master plans of Gwadar city and the Gwadar port master plan. the decision taken at the ministerial level was that the Gwadar Port Master Plan will be superimposed on the Gwadar City Master Plan. But there are some certain conflicts between the two plans, which we are trying to address, and hopefully will manage to resolve the problem. In order to promote exports, the port wet charges and dry charges were reduced at port casting for the exporters. Likewise, to promote tourism, we have launched a ferry. We tried to launch a ferry service between Karachi, Gwadar, and even to international stations like in Iran, UAE, and Bahrain. We invited interest from private sector, but unfortunately we haven't been able to get some positive response. These are company which we are negotiating, and we expect that they will bring the ferry service within a couple of months, but it's not yet final. We also introduced the concept of off-dock terminals for landlocked countries of Central Asia. And we have in fact acquired a land at the Gwadar port, near the Gwadar port, to give this as a off-dock terminal to Central Asian countries like Uzbekistan and Afghanistan and other countries as well on the region. We have made some measures to control marine pollution. After a lapse of many years, a meeting of Marine Pollution Control Board, which is chaired by the Minister for Maritime Affairs, was held at Karachi on 9th May 2022. The last meeting of this forum was held in 2016, in December 2016. So there is some awareness at the ministerial level. The challenge which we still face is the water treatment plants, which are are to be installed by the provincial government, and there is an issue of funding, share of funding between the provincial and the federal government, how to fund these water treatment plants. One of our August participants mentioned about the inland waterways. In this regard, we are thankful to the World Bank again that they have a study has been completed in this regard and has been furnished to us. That study has been shared with Ministry of Inter-Provincial Coordination for placing it before the Council of Common Interest, because as you know that the inland waterways is primarily a provincial subject, so we need consent of CCI to proceed in this regard. There are other smaller interventions which we have made, and we have tried to link with academia as well. And MOU is being planned. It's almost been finalized between National Institute of Maritime Affairs, NEMA, Barry University, and it's expected to be signed shortly. So we'll intend to develop these relations with other academia as well. Maybe we can go with SDPI as well in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I know we have ran over time a bit, and I'll be coming to Dr. Abid Suleri for his vote of thanks and closing remarks. But I think I saw Umar Saab's hand up from UNDP. If you'd like to contribute, maybe very briefly, and then I go back to Dr. Suleri. Ji, Umar Saab, pehle le. Ji, please.
Thank you very much. And it's always wonderful that jab aap meetings mein aate hain na, and there are different stakeholders and different perspectives. When you look at the government perspective, wo lagta hai just now we are reading a Mutaliya Pakistan book that everything is present in the country and there are no losses. We are looking at it from a different vision. I'm an economist and I always look things from a very critical manner. And I think it's a very decent work. It's an excellent, but it requires a little bit economic modeling. And when we look at the models, there have been three major things. One has been the green Keynesianism, green Keynes. Then we have the green Schumpeter, and the last one is the Pigovian taxes. और अगर हम तीनों को sum up करें, Keynes का जो philosophy थी, that was basically the government intervention is required. And that's why I think things have been slowed in Pakistan, because we also think that, okay, government needs to come in. Then when we talk about the Schumpeter, he talked about capitalism will be changing its form with the axis of democracy, and that we see that now the business models are changing with reference to Pakistan. And the third one is the Pigovian taxes, that if there is any negative externality, which we see at the moment, and 2 years back, Al Gore said, "Ki oceans ke andar we are declaring emergency," but the good part is that oceans have a natural rebound capacity. And as Admiral Saab was saying that the fish is going to be finished and all that, I have a different perspective that we are not talking about the quantity of the fish, we are talking about the quality of the fish. And in the international market, we are just selling for $2 to $3. But if you look at the Bangladesh and India, they are selling it for $6 to $7. So that is the difference. And the problem is not the quantity, the problem is our value chain, the way we store the fish and all that. So that needs to be. And when you talked about KT Bandar, it's my doctoral work is in KT Bandar, and KT Bandar is one of the labs for it can be a sandbox experiment, because it actually changed 3 times in the last 60-70 years because of the climate change. So we can see that there's a very plausible case for KT Bandar that climate change is happening. It's a reality. Regarding the financial instruments, I'll just talk about 2 major questions. That until and unless we're not going to put a dollar value, or we don't monetize, we cannot make the decisions in a right manner. So what cannot be measured cannot be determined in terms of the decision making. So we need to calculate the gross marine product of Pakistan. And 2 years back, I won't say I was the first one, but yes, my paper was published and it came around 1.52 billion. 1.52 billion, that is the gross marine product of Pakistan, which included the mangroves, which included the fisheries and all the direct and indirect usages. But now when we come on to the capital part, the financial instrument, I would say that we need to understand, we need to develop the feasibilities, that when we are saying that, okay, blue economy is the alternative development paradigm. And when we look at it, it is not going to be a linear process. It's going to require lots and lots of finances. We talk about that, let's go for resilient ports, let's go for green ports, maritime offshore, wind renewable energy, but where is the numbers? That how much finance is needed? This is the primary thing, that if we want to change our development paradigm, we say that it has a huge potential, but let's get out of that Pakistan study book. Let's talk about the numbers, that if you're going for this energy, this much amount of money is required. It's an excellent initiative. I think to my knowledge, like in the last 1 week, I came to realize that, okay, Bank of Punjab initiated the green bonds, and now the transition has to be towards the blue bonds. But in the bond market, you say that JP Morgan generated 150 billion of the bonds, but the idea was that World Bank was also supporting it. But in Pakistan, the model is that we rely on the government, but I think now we need to bring the private sector inside. We have the Indian example, 12 billion bonds have been raised from it, but it was basically the private sector. We look at the development of Sagarmala, the project, but it was not the government, it was basically the private sector. If you look at the budget, I never asked any naval person, I actually asked the budget, look at the budget document. The amount of allocation that has been we don't need to go for the bigger promises, rather the smaller one, and let's start with the MSMEs. And I made an index like 2 years back with the International Trade Center, that where the MSME stands and how the coastal communities with the little meager amounts, they can actually generate a better return on their investment. So I think MSMEs need to be focused. And one of the issues is that when we are talking about coastal tourism, yes, it is very scant, but what if we join the aviation tourism with the coastal tourism, where you don't need much of it, but it's more of the acquiring of planes, and we have venture capitalists in Pakistan which can do it. And unfortunately, why in Pakistan the coastal tourism has not been projected the way it should be, as it's in Maldives or other countries, because I think the first and the foremost thing has been the maritime security. And at once the security issues start emerging, it is still there, but let's first take the step that first do the capacity building of the people, that okay, you can earn a lot from these environmental about from the coastal tourism. And instead of, we need to go for the win-win situation in terms of creating an ecosystem where private investment should come. And my last pointer, that in terms of private investment, it's not that any businessman will come and invest the money. We need to make it attractive. And the variables that are important, that what would be the time horizon for this investment, what would be the risk return, what are the liquidity asset choices, the location, and who will be the co-investors, and the sustainability features of the investment. If we look at these parameters, we can have a good business model for the coastal ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Dr. Valid points. Jumar, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Wakar. Very difficult to come after Anil now.
Why?
He's given a very good economic perspective. It's not working. Is it? Sorry. One key point, I think the whole discussion around blue economy, what it needs is the solution provided by Dr. Salman. We really need a cross maritime product. The narrative when we talk about blue economy is like, immediately you go to tourism, you go to fishery. Nobody talks about a gross amount in terms of what potential it has or what is the current state. So I think there needs to be a narrative. When we talk about agriculture, we talk about industry, we talk about services. This now needs to be, if you want to really benefit as a country from blue economy, there has to be a fourth sector of the economy talking about blue economy. And then the narrative can go further deeper. You can talk about cash crops, you can talk about other items within each of these broader areas, but we really need blue economy as a fourth pillar of our gross domestic product maybe. So that's one. Secondly, again, Anil talked very deeply about one good thing about this report was it captured the solution aspect of it. We really need financing for blue economy, and it's talking about blue bonds and other things. But to do that, we also need projects. We cannot just say there has to be a dollar amount, as Anil said, but dollar amount for what projects, and that's where the resource mobilization, be it public or private, would come in. Maybe our colleague from Admiral Saab mentioned Astola. That's one project then, and that's where you start generating resources to develop or you raise blue bonds for that. So with these two comments, I think that's my contribution to this discussion. But wonderful initiative. We look forward to working more closely on this. It's an interesting topic, interesting field for Pakistan.
Thank you, Marcel. And I think both the last interventions by yourself and Dr. Anil, while you've pointed towards tourism, and maybe before I give it back to Abid Saab, I liked the point which Zafar Saab made, that while of course financing is on the table, one has to absorb that financing in a more organic manner. So just to give you an example around tourism assets, which we continue to talk about, just in this hotel where we are sitting, I want 55 rooms, the people that I'm bringing from outside of the country, and I don't have 55 rooms in December in this hotel where we are sitting, So unless we work in a very coherent manner on developing the tourism assets, the rest can then follow, again, organically. Sir, please, for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Wakar, for conducting it. I must acknowledge Rahat and her colleague Pawan from Washington, who introduced the subject of blue economy to SDPI back in 2017. And since then, in bits and pieces, we have been trying to contribute whatever we could. And I'm glad that today we are about to take the first leap. As Wakar mentioned, that it's an ongoing work. Now, if I have to, I won't try to sum up, but some of the things are very clear. There is a business case for blue economy. There is an energy case for blue economy. There is this environmental and ecological case for blue economy. There is this green and clean port initiative case for blue economy. Mangroves for ecosystem restoration. There is a social and tourism development cases from blue economy. Inland waterways were discussed, and similarly the potential for public-private partnership. If all of these things they are actually get materialized through improving law and order situation, there are ample opportunities for generating local livelihoods, which would be again a stimulus towards further improved law and order situation. There are at international financial level, we have the cases for getting benefit from ESGs of corporate sector. We have the benefit of green and blue bonds. We can also present our case for debt for nature swap. Of course, making these floods as the entry point for ecosystem restoration, Indus Basin restoration. And Zafar Saab, I would invite you if you would like to accompany us for COP27 in December for Sharm el Sheikh. I think that is where Pakistan would be this year with Ministry of Climate Change and with all other stakeholders, would be presenting the case of loss and damage very strongly. And we know that this downpour that affected Balochistan and Sindh, it was basically warm temperature, warm air on Indian Ocean that then wreaked all havocs on Balochistan and Sindh. So we need to prepare a collective case and present it to the international community. And this is a collective effort. No single organization, no single government department, no single provincial or federal government or entity can take care of it. We have here Financial Institute, think tank, representative of United Nations, multilaterals, ICAP, private sector, and I must also acknowledge the presence of Nima in the room. Of course, due to paucity of time, we couldn't engage you, Kavarsa, but I hope during lunch we'll be able to get your feedback as well. So it's a collective effort, and I think with this collective spirit, we need to take this agenda forward, and SDPI looks forward to keep engaged with Bank of Punjab and with all of you in future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And as you said, let's continue this discussion over lunch. The lunch is served at Zamana restaurant. Our teams will escort. Thank you.